Hello again, and it's a pleasure to announce our keynote speaker who is now with us, Nnimmo Bassey from Nigeria. Nnimmo, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Ah, that's great. So welcome to our event. It's really an honor. We are pleased to have you with us today. Maybe just a short introduction for those of you who might not know him. Nnimmo Bassey is a man with many talents and one of the front runners in Africa when it comes to the fight for environmental rights and protections, and this since years. He is a Nigerian architect, environmental activist, author, and also poet. So you see the great variety of his talents. He's the director of the ecological think tank Health of Mother Earth Foundation, and also a member of the steering committee of Oil Watch International, a network resisting the expansion of fossil fuels extraction in the global south. For his incredible work, he was granted the Right Livelihood Award, also known as the Alternative Nobel Prize, in 2010. There's many more things you could tell about him, but I would just leave the floor to you, Nnimmo Bassey, and I'm really looking forward to your vision, to your thoughts on a socio-ecological transformation in Africa and what it will take to go for such a transformation that, of course, needs, I guess, all the stakeholders on board. So thank you again, Nnimmo, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for this brilliant opportunity to share my thoughts on socio-ecological transformation in Africa. It's really a very big assignment, and I believe that my contribution will just be like contributing to the continuation of the conversation, and I'm hoping that it will be helpful for us all as we move forward in this effort. So I will share some slides as I to make the conversation, to just illustrate certain points of our discussions. We all do know that indeed something needs to change. Something needs to change because there's already been such dramatic environmental and ecological changes in Africa and in the world generally. And the more we think about it, the more complex we see the complexities and the difficulties, especially because across much of Africa, we don't have accessible records in writing far back into history. There were writing forms in Africa, in parts of Nigeria, in North Africa, in West Africa, and of course in all over the continent. But a lot of these, they are either inaccessible or we cannot fully comprehend. And so we've lost a lot of history. We've lost a lot of memory. We've lost a lot of techniques on how to live close to nature. And now we are forced in many instances to think in ways that are not very beneficial. And this is why this topic is extremely critical, so that we can learn about the fact that the fundamental basis for progress, for well-being, is recognizing that we are part of nature, that we are one with nature, and that we're all children of Mother Earth. Now, when we look at the map of Africa, we see that Africa is totally surrounded by water, completely surrounded. So Africa is accessible from any direction, from every direction. This is both an advantage and also a challenge. It's an advantage in the sense that we can go anywhere we want to go from any part of the continent. The challenge is that there are so many different influences coming to the continent that can either dilute what we know would be good for us, can bring in negative ideas that would be negative, could also bring ideas that are positive. I believe that the position of Africa as the center of the world, if you agree with me, has also made it possible for the influence of imperialism, influence of colonialism, and influence of current neocolonialism, because the continent is totally exposed. There's no way to hide. And of course, the African continent is also very welcoming. So these challenges all add up to a problem. And one of the things I believe for us to have a proper socio-ecological transformation is for us to have what Vandana Shiva has called earth democracy on the continent. This is a clear principle and practice that is needed. I call a subsection of this resource democracy with an hyphen between the RE and the source. Resource, which means reconnecting to the source. The source being Mother Earth, the source being nature. Because the way we relate to nature, clearly shows the way we relate to other humans and other communities. So for us to have a true socio-ecological transformation, we must reconnect to the earth so that we can reconnect to each other and use the energy that comes up from this to move forward, to make progress. And this is why the African concept of Ubuntu is extremely critical in the pursuit of socio-ecological transformation. We are so interconnected, we are so connected to one another that we cannot do much if we stay apart. This is one reason why some of us don't agree to the partitioning of Africa just by the Sahara Desert. And sometimes when people think of Africa, they think of North Africa or sub-Saharan Africa. The Sahara has now become a geographic barrier to divide the continent, whereas the continent is one, Africa is one. Africa is not divided into two or three. So when we overcome these kind of mental barriers, we begin to think as one, and then we can share all the forces that we have, all the impulses that we have, all the benefits and the gift of nature that we have, to work together. And then, of course, we can think in a different way. Now, a big challenge for us on the continent has been the imaginaries that build economic progress and physical progress. One of the big contributors to the environmental changes and climate change in the world is the dependence on fossil fuels. And right now, fossil fuels are found all over the continent. It's either coal or gas or oil or all of them in almost all the countries. And unfortunately, again, there's a seduction that comes from resources, from financial resources that comes from fossil fuel extraction. And some of our politicians have declared that Africa will only develop with oil and gas, that this will happen whether the West likes it or not. We tend to think that when there's an argument to shift away from fossil dependence, is as if this is meant to punish Africa. It's as if this is meant to stop Africa from making progress. It's as if this is meant to deny Africa what the West had used to get to where they are today. And that is a very big barrier. The imagination that drives this kind of position, the narrative that drives this kind of position is something that we need to challenge. It just means that we cannot think beyond what has been or what we know to have been. But what we know to have been is limited to the extent of our imagination and the extent of our histories. But our history is not complete. It doesn't go to the beginning of the past. It doesn't go to the far past. A lot is buried and memories have been lost. If we could look far back into when the continent was very advanced in terms of organization, in terms of solidarity, in terms of unity, in terms of peace and harmony on the continent, then we would see that there's a possibility of building a new future of complete socio-ecological transformation. which I believe is what we are trying to look at today. There are many barriers currently that blocks the possibilities. They include environmental racism, includes neocolonialism, inequalities being built by the push by capital, push by transnational corporations, push by the global system of inequality, geopolitics. We also see barriers of gender discrimination, and of course, ecocide. Ecocide is one of the biggest attacks on the environment of Africa, where we have massive, almost irreversible environmental degradation in many parts of the continent. I have personally had the misfortune of visiting extractivist locations on the continent, and what I have seen over the years, truly, truly overwhelming. But we have to start from somewhere. We have to start by overcoming the narrative and retelling our stories to build resilience to the climate, defend our communities, stop destructive extraction, and support principles and practices that are helpful to us, including the way we produce food. This is what I've been trying to drive at. We cannot just say what we do not see does not exist. A lot of things that we don't see do exist. We don't see everything. We don't see beyond it. We have to dig beneath the surface. It's a spoonful of healthy soil contains millions, if not billions, of organisms. We don't see them with our eyes, but they are there. And now going back into we don't see our history. These days, with the rapid transformation and changes around us, technology and all that, we don't even look back many years. We can't remember when there was no mobile phone in common usage. We don't remember when there was no internet in common usage. We just take this to be the normal thing and the way to go in the future. But if we allow things to continue to build upon us, to force itself upon us on the continent without looking at where they're leading us, then of course, transformation will be almost impossible. What I'm saying is that we have to begin by interrogating common popular narratives, narratives that do not look at the intrinsic value of nature, that looks at, whenever we think about environment, we think about economy. We talk about sustainability, we talk about the economy, we talk about social relations, we talk about other things, so about environment, but of course, the major plank of thinking in terms of sustainability is always the economy. So we have the green economy, the blue economy, and we forget about the environment completely. The environment becomes just a platform for exploitation, a platform for transforming for consumption, not transforming for better life, for better living, for well-being. And this, unless we critically re-examine these kinds of narrative, is going to be very difficult. It's going to be very difficult. And this is why we need to look around us and see what is really going on. Look at the extractivist locations, look at the burning coal mines in South Africa, in other places, look at fracking going on in places like Algeria, the attempts to begin fracking in Botswana, in Namibia, the oil spills of the Niger Delta. The Niger Delta is a location that has almost been destroyed by extractivist activities. And this is done in the name of progress, in the name of finance for development, for advancement. But what we see, especially in the oil field communities, in the extractivist communities, is destruction, complete destruction. I've also seen, in the case of Ghana, for example, extraction of gold. If you go to a place called Obuasi, it has the biggest underground gold mines on the continent. And that society, that community, that town is now a shadow of what it was once upon a time, clearly showing that this is not progress, because everything we're doing is extremely destructive and negative. And I'm sharing a picture of a burning gas furnace on ground level somewhere in the Niger Delta in Nigeria. And we're having gas worth over $2 billion going up in smoke every day. But that is not just, the economic aspect is not the big problem. The biggest problem is ecological destruction. The fact that communities cannot sleep without the noise of this roaring furnace. They cannot sleep without the smoke, the soot that is covering the air, the acid rain because of the acids in the gases emitted by this furnace, the health problems, the cancers, and all the rest. And so you're saying that we're having progress, we're making, getting a lot of resources, but it's also cutting life. And life expectancy in the oil field is a meager 41 years. 41 years, that's a life expectancy. Now, this is not living. This is terrorism, this environmental terrorism by transnational and national oil corporations. And for us to move into, you cannot move in the future on this platform, because with this, there's no future. There's no future. If your life is only 41 years, you can't even see the change happening. So for us to see the transformation, socio-ecological transformation must be something that will persist over a few generations. And this means that we have to, again, look at the ecological foundations. And they continue with exploitation. This is example of a territory completely destroyed by oil spills. And this is in Ogoniland. And of course, when you consider the oil spills and then consider the gas flaring and all the toxic waste dumped into the environment, clearly extractivism is not the way forward. And we have to shift away from that. And so the question is, are we fueling progress or destruction? Now, the world has, the Paris Agreement talks about 1.5 degrees as a target, which is applauded by many politicians, or well below 2 degrees Celsius. But already we know that 1.5 degrees temperature increase above pre-industrial level would mean to annihilation, destruction of communities and life in Africa, starting from, including in South Africa, including the Sahelian territories of Africa, including North Africa, including the entire continent. We're going to see more freak events. We're going to see more storms like cyclone, like what we had in March last year, Cyclone Ida, that hit Mozambique, Tanzania, and other countries and killed 1,000 people. I do know that the African Union is making some effort to create a belt, a green belt that will run from Djibouti in East Africa to Dakar, Senegal in West Africa. But until that is done, and done with native varieties and not with genetically engineered trees, done with materials and trees that communities can relate with and build into economic zones, ecological zones. If that is not done, if we have trees that communities don't relate to, that don't add value to their lives, to their culture, then of course that again would be another wasted opportunity. And so we need to look at what the opportunities are, what the ideas are, and how we can move forward with those ideas. Unfortunately, the principles in the world today is that techno fixes can fix everything, but the truth is that they cannot. Technology would not fix what we've destroyed. And so getting the carbon out of the air, we believe principally means leaving carbon in the soil and not bringing it out and then trying to suck them out through geoengineering, putting mirrors in the sky, whitening the clouds in a measure of radiation management, cloud seeding from the ocean, pumping seawater into the atmosphere, genetically engineering trees that can absorb more carbon through a heightened level of photosynthesis, having mechanisms to capture carbon from factories and from production mechanisms, increasing the capacity of the oceans to absorb more carbon. Already we're having serious problems with ocean acidification. The more the carbon absorbed into the ocean, the more we change the ecosystem, marine ecosystems, the more we have the tendency of destroying life forms and transforming in the negative direction. And so what's the best way to do? The best way to go forward for us is to work with nature. And this is what I've been hammering on right from the beginning. And one way to do this is for us to recover our history, recover our memory. Africa has to look back to where we're coming from. Why did we do what we used to do? Why did we live how we live? Why was the architecture different than what we have now? What was Timbuktu 1,000 years ago? What happened? What changed? What changed the situation on the continent? What happened to Great Zimbabwe? What happened to all the changes, all the things? Where did we lose our memory? Where did we lose our mind? You can't lose your memory without and still remain sane. It means we lost our mind. We need to recover our mind. Where do we want to go? What's the future like? We have to have a dream of the future, then we can make these stepping stones, building towards making that future happen. This critical is what we need to do. We need to rebuild our knowledge, cosmology, African technology that supports the ecological situation, and then how to organize, building solidarity across the nation. And so we need to build coalitions for socio-ecological transformation. In Nigeria, we've started in a small way to bring groups together to look at how we can make this happen. But we need to make this a continent-wide coalition of building solidarity, sharing knowledge, sharing our stories, and then building a future that we can now use different formations and different strategies to work towards that, to push for a transition, and not to play the victim all the time, and not to also romanticize the past. We need to look at what is possible, what is real. And one concrete example is that we really need to stand against industrial agriculture that works against our culture. We need to look at food system, seed system that are culture smart, that supports our farmers. We are being fed. Africa is being fed by small-scale farmers. So why are we not supporting small-scale farmers? Small-scale farmers working with agroecology, working with a system that supports the environment, are clearly showing that we can actually cool the planet, and build advantage onto the continent if we choose an agricultural system that support the local economies, support the local cultures, support people's spiritual well-being, support a clean environment that supports life expectancy and support the health of the people, boost biodiversity. By doing this, we'll be able to build resilience against pandemics like COVID-19, which of course has a roots can be traced back to loss of habitat and mindless relationship with nature, either in the laboratory or in the field. So we need to come to a point where communities, to really build, as a roundup, to build a situation, to build a picture of, a clear picture of an Africa where a socio-ecological transformation is positive. We have to have collective dreams, collective solutions, because we're having collective challenges. So we have to think beyond, when we think about the economy, it should go beyond financial profit. For how many years have we, as human beings, been using money that we should think that our future depends on money? Many thousand millions of years, humans were not using money for exchange or for living or for getting what they wanted. And so money should not be the vehicle. Money would never be the vehicle for driving into the future. It's a vehicle that builds greed, that distorts and supports exploitation. And so we should build more our memory of recognize the right of Mother Earth to maintain and regenerate her cycles. And so how are we going to make this happen? Collective self-organizing. that sounds like a contradiction in terms, but when we connect one another, we are organizing ourselves. So collective organizing in terms of harmony of existence is also self-organizing. Participatory social action, learning process. The future would be obtained through learning. And then of course, capitalism we have to work consciously against capitalist relationships, which is built on exploitation, destruction of nature, and transformation in a negative way. So doing all this, conclusion, we have to build Africa-wide solidarity and solidarity with other regions in the world, reconnect to nature, own our history and narrative, and understand that what we do today affects the possibility of future generations living. It could be the end of future generations. So we need to think about those who are coming in 100, 200 years. Do we want them to come at all? Or do we want to be, is this the end of history? I believe the answer is that we don't want this to be the end of history. And to ensure that we don't want this to be the end of history, we have to examine the platform on which we stand and where we want to go to. I thank you for giving me this platform to share these thoughts. These are my thoughts about the socio-ecological transformation that is possible in Africa. And this all means about working together, solidarity, and not merely going individually and exploiting as much as you can exploit without thinking about the well-being of other people and other relatives on the planet, all other beings, because we're all one.
Thank you so much, Nnimmo Bassey, for this great and inspiring keynote speech. To me, this gave many very insightful elements, and I mean also things that some might already know, but I think it's always important to make again this point how much, as you said, it is important to maybe reconnect to the source and really put environment in the center and not just talk maybe about the green or blue economy, but really see what is the narrative that we all together can tell or even retell, reconstitute on the basis of fundaments that have been there in history throughout the historic culture of Africa. And certainly it's important to build coalitions, to get organized, because as you rightly pointed it out, this is a challenge that cannot be overcome all alone, but that needs many people, many actors that work jointly towards this objective.